this board, and I'll start off by asking if members, if anyone has any declarations of interest in any of the items on the agenda this afternoon. That's a Taylor.
Yeah, it's on the chairman that a member of the AOMB. I represent this council on the AOMB, and this is the application within the AOMB.
That's what it said.
Yes, I'd like to declare a personal interest on application 3186/20/BAR. That the applicants are friends.
Thank you. That's noted. So we'll move on then to the first application on our list this afternoon, which is 143021 ARM, and it's cited east of Creek Close, Frogmore, and Charlotte. Would you like to introduce?
Chairman, if I may, just clarification, the reason why Charlotte's stepping in to present this application is the case officer, David Jeffrey, unfortunately came down with COVID 2 days ago and decided it probably wasn't in the best interest of everybody else in the room if he came in to present this application. So he is still working. Charlotte has been fully briefed. That's why she's here instead of David Jeffrey.
Thank you.
But please be mindful of that when you're asking me questions. Okay, so this application is a reserve matters application for a site east of Creek Close in Frogmore. It's a reserve matters application for 8 dwellings. Before I start, I just want to 2 updates for members. Since the report was written, the neighbourhood plan in Frogmore and Sherford has been through a referendum. So the neighbourhood plan section of the report is slightly out of date, but the case officer has been through it, and there's sort of no changes with regard to the compliance with policy. That's just an update. And secondly, one of the conditions recommended is in relation to mitigation for cell bunting within the site. The council's legal team have confirmed that that is covered by mitigation measures secured through the section 106 with the outline application. So we don't need that condition in the reserve matters. So we're no longer recommending that that condition is applied. So that gives you updates. Right, so the site is, as you can see, on the southern edge of Frogmore. This map is slightly out of date. There are houses in here already, if you can see my cursor. There you go, you can see them on the aerial view. So houses here, so it will just begin here. So here is the site layout plan. So as you can see, we've got 8 dwellings, 2 of which are affordable houses, which is secured through the section 26 previously agreed. There's an area of communal green space and a play area. And there's an existing access into the field here, which would be relocated up here. So just to give you an idea of the site, it slopes from south down to the north, so it's more elevated at the south where the play area is going to be. Members, just mindful of this row of houses here, because I'll be talking about that in a minute. That's where most of the concern about neighbour amenity is. So just to give you a bit of slight context there. This is looking northeast, and then looking back up the field, so from north looking up to the south. And these are the boundary with Creek Close, houses, which I pointed out just now. And then this is the Winslade Close, which are the houses that I mentioned just now in terms of neighbour amenity, and a hedgerow, which will be retained as part of the proposed scheme. So yeah, so as I say, site layout here, one of the main concerns has been with neighbour amenity to Winslade Close up here. As I mentioned, the existing hedge bank will be retained, and there's also been a sort of green buffer area here, which has been proposed to just provide a bit of separation between the two. The applicant has submitted a section here showing the distances between the site and the relationship between the two. So as you can see, they'll be separated by this hedge bank, the green buffer, which includes some trees, and the distances between the two accord with the guidance in the SPD. So officers are happy with the neighbour impact of the proposal. Some sections looking the other way. So if you can see Winslow Close is down here on the right hand side. And then we've just got the floor plans and elevations, because obviously design and layout are part of reserve matters that are being considered. Materials are generally in keeping with the area. We've got render, stonework and slate roofs. So to sum up, really, the principle of the development has obviously already been established by the outline permission. We're looking at the reserve matters, which officers consider to all be acceptable. And the introduction of that green buffer to the north means that we're now satisfied that the relationship with the neighbouring properties at Winslow Close is acceptable. And therefore recommending approval subject to the conditions.
Thank you for that. Members, do you have any questions to ask the planning officer? Yes, so we'll move to speakers. We don't have an objector. The supporter is Alex Perroton. Would you like to come give us your 3-minute presentation? I'm sure you know the rules and regulations of what happens. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. This reserve matters application has been submitted for proposed detailed design of a small development of homes at Frogmore. Development forms part of the council's 5-year housing land supply and will help to address the council's ongoing housing crisis. The detailed design put forward offers highly efficient, well-considered and highly sustainable homes. Despite being only a minor development, the proposed site layout allows for the creation of new open green space on the most elevated part of the site for the residents of Creek Close to enjoy, and includes a play area for the children of the close. Much new planting is proposed, including native species such as traditional Devon orchard trees, new Devon hedge banks and wildflower grasses. The proposed landscaping will bring forward considerable enhancement and net gains to biodiversity on site and to the surrounding area. Each house has been designed to include an air source heat pump, electric vehicle charging point and solar panels. These dwellings will be highly efficient, highly airtight, sustainable homes meeting local needs. The design and size of the affordable homes are supported by the council's affordable housing specialists, and their size will best meet the identified local parish need. Architecturally, there is no difference in specification between the on-site affordable housing and the open market housing. Both have been designed to the same high standards, including meeting category M42 of building regulations for accessibility and adaptability. The proposed materials and finishes of the homes reflect the local vernacular and enforce local distinctiveness. The proposed layout allows each house to have a front and rear garden and parking, complete with electric vehicle charging point. The design and layout fully accords with the council's supplementary planning document, including ensuring there are sufficient distances between the proposed homes and the existing properties to the north in Winslow Close. The design ensures there will be no overlooking of neighbouring properties. In addition, a green planted corridor is proposed to the north of the site to increase privacy and separation. With regards to the Frogmore and Sherford neighbourhood plan, the plan recognises Frogmore as being the most sustainable location within the parish to locate new housing. The neighbourhood plan specifically acknowledges this proposed development with the expectation for it to come forward, and on that basis, the plan has not allocated any new housing provision within the parish owing to this existing consent. The application has not received any objection from any of the residents of Creek Close. However, the concerns of the Parish Council with regards to the build programme and impact on local residents are fully appreciated. As the case officer has pointed out, there is a pre-commencement condition attached to the outline permission which requests the submission and approval of a construction management plan prior to works commencing. Once the proposed design is agreed, it is then possible to derive a detailed construction management plan to ensure the impact on local residents is minimalised. Members, we hope you can appreciate the great amount of care and consideration that has gone into the detailed design of this highly sustainable development, and it is respectfully asked that you support the application in accordance with the planning officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. But I'll ask members if you have any questions. Councillor Foss.
Yeah, I do. I don't quite know how to put this, but I can only put it straightforward, I suppose. Why do you need an agricultural access from that one into the next thing? Got 2 other accesses with that too.
The agricultural access is simply looked to be, well, it's retained from it's effectively moved forward. It's quite due to the narrowness of Mill Lane. getting large vehicles in and out of that field is quite challenging. So this access really serves as providing a very occasional means of access for agricultural vehicles to get into the field, which is used for arable purposes.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you something. The problem is the last time we had one that was only put in the last application. We're assured that it was there only for use of as agriculture. You've got one in this one again, and there are certain parishioners who are somewhat suspicious, shall I say, that you could well be looking to do another one like this in the future. And yeah, I'm asking the, I think that you can understand it, or people were thinking that way. Yeah, okay, they need it, but I would have said you could have accessed that field somewhere else, but we'll discuss that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Would it be fair to say that if that access road wasn't there, that would completely change the potential they have some in terms of that it's that access road takes the current layout that we're looking.
The general layout has actually largely been informed by way of landscape impact. So the green space is located on the most elevated part of the site, which then from a landscape visual impact perspective, reduces the visual impact of the development as a whole in the wider area. So that's really what's driven the overall general layout, plus of course ensuring there is sufficient distance and a green corridor to the north between the homes and the existing terrace to the north.
So you would contend that if that access wasn't there, you would argue that, in your opinion, it's the best layout of the site.
Yes, and that's what's been advised by landscape specialists as well.
Okay. Anyone else, any questions? No, if not, we'll move on to the parish council representative from Warrenshire, which is Councillor Smith.
Okay, you probably have to cut me off because this is
Thank
literally
you.
something I did last night.
I think that if I may interject, I actually phoned Nigel last night and he knew nothing about it. I do know that the clerk of the council who has received the email from us, but our wife is very ill and evidently there's been a miscommunication. So he only knew last night that we were having this meeting today. So it may be, it could be a bit bitty that way, Nigel, don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, it's time. I'm worried. I've had to take our report.
Hey, carry on.
Press it. Okay, the parish council, the site and the road layout do not account of neighbouring wind-safe close dwelling and the impact on the ANOB. The retention of a field gate for the passage of agricultural vehicles and machinery throughout the residential estate is not supportable and limits beneficial site layout options and improvements. Pre-close in neighbouring residents, health and safety and amenity considerations require an application prerequisite the submission of a development construction management plan. Site and layout. The dwelling would be an overbearing and dominating scale, seriously impacting the amenities of the neighbourhood single-storey Winslade Close homes, which are housing association and reserved for the elderly. The north-south cul-de-sac does not have provision for vehicles turning manoeuvres. Visitors and service vehicles reversing manoeuvres will be seriously impaired road safety and add to the oversailing headlight into the Winslade Close. The retention of the gate to the site boundary, the retention of a gate, say, for vehicle access is challenged. The field gate would be some 350 metres from Winslade Farm. The Winsay Farm has a modern purpose-built concrete access drive and well-sited access onto the main road. As recorded in the SHDC Specialist Natural Environment Report for the 9th of August, the retention of the agricultural access is questioned as facilitating access for large farm vehicles to a small residential development. It seems to be incompatible combination when the remainder of the underdeveloped field is linked to the rest of the landholding with access from other field boundaries. It would be wrong to permit agricultural vehicles, machinery and supplies to access. Right. If you allow me a little more than 30 seconds. Right. It'd be wrong to permit agricultural vehicles, machinery and supplies to access and egress of the adjacent fields and beyond through Creek Close. Such traffic will present a real and needless road safety and environmental hazard. Creek Close was built under a parish council sponsored scheme, and it was an exception site. A dangerous threat to many of there are many young people who live on that site.
Members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Smith, please? No, thank you.
Yeah. I was asked to bring this by the parish council because you've heard the concern from the councillor about access. Big large farm machinery going through there. I know we have farm machinery going around Southwest, couple of Southwest roads anyway, but I think it's somewhat not needed. But safety wise, it's questionable. As for the overlooking, well, I'll leave you to make your own mind up. It looks like the overlooking would be too bad to the house north. It's funny because it slopes the wrong way. You think bottom end is the south, but it's not north. And there's going to be some trees not growing there, but going there. That you'll have to make your own mind up, but I do question the layout of the actual application. Be a lot more roomy for that number of houses if you didn't have that road right the way through the middle. Very little turning area for cars or anything else. I'm not going to say a great deal more than that, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Okay.
Sorry, members. Can we please put mics on when we're talking? Because we are still taping the meetings.
I do apologise. I brought you up on one of yours. Yes. Yeah, my question was really, it's been a highways report on it, because there's a lot of talk about narrow road and turning and everything else. Is it been a highways report or not?
Highway, I kept it. They have the Charlotte.
No, highways haven't objected. They're happy with the turning provision. Yeah.
I think need to look. Yeah. Right.
There is a paragraph from highways on page 53.
Okay. Right.
Anyone else with any questions? No, if not, we'll see to the debate.
Thank you, Rose. I did actually have a question. It wasn't to Richard. it was so that just and I probably missed it in the report. The sides of the house, those two bottom houses, they're facing Winslade Close. Do they have obscured glass, or are there any windows in those? Yeah, so those ones there.
So plot 5 that you can see here has got kind of a garage in the some separating between the two. I'm gonna have to check the elevation flow. Yeah.
So looking at the plans, I think, Charlotte, if you can go to the one that has the garage, the elevation with the garage on, the only window that could be in 7 and 8 at the end would be a landing window above the garage. I don't believe any of them have habitable rooms in the gable end, the gable ends that face the neighbouring properties. Because on the floor plans, there's certainly no, those floor plans there's certainly no windows shown in the gable ends. You've got the garage roof. I can't see a window above the garage roof on the first floor plan. Yeah. Thank you.
Members, we move to the debate. Who would like to speak first? Don't all rush at once. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall start off by, and I apologise because this is extremely petty of me. And I appreciate, and this isn't directed simply at the parish council representative that came here, and I realise he was put in at short notice, but we have a lot of people that come to make representations at this committee who are very passionate about the area of outstanding natural beauty. And the number of times I've heard it referred to as the ANOB. Again, very petty of me, and I apologise, but it's something that annoys me a bit. But there we go. Looking at this application, yes, I have no real problem with it. With regards to the highways matter, I could see how one could read that potentially in a few years' time another application comes forward for more houses, and how I suspect that occasionally breaks us a little bit because it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but we will, of course, consider each application on its own merits for the Monetary Officer gives me a funny look. Apart from that, I don't see any other problems with this, and if the highways haven't commented on it, then I don't suspect we have much of the grounds for rejecting it on that ground. So I'm happy to propose approval of the officer recommendation.
Yeah. Anyone else like to add to the debate? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question, and it comes back to the question that I was asking the applicant. It strikes me that we're looking at an application here where outline mission principles been established. So we're actually looking at what's going to put us on the side. I suppose it comes back to the same question as before. When the planners have looked at this plan, have they questioned the justification the agricultural spur road, which hugely, I believe, I know the applicant doesn't necessarily believe, but I think hugely dictates the layout of the site. So I suppose my question on it to Cyril is, do we know what the justification is? Is it one that on balance we feel as officers you can support?
Well, given that the recommendation is for approval, I am obviously going to be saying yes, on balance, it is something we feel we can support. I can't give you any more justification for the agricultural access than the applicant has already provided. I personally don't know this site well enough to say whether the other existing accesses to the site are either less convenient or more challenging to use, whichever the phrase you want to use of this. My understanding is that the existing agricultural access that is effectively to be moved further down the road is used, but it is only very occasional use, and it's not not used significantly. So, given that it is occasional use, I personally don't think there's a massive conflict between the agricultural use of the access with the dwellings, because all bar two of them aren't facing directly onto this road. By the nature of agricultural vehicles and the nature of this lane, this access, sorry, not lane, vehicle speed will be relatively low, you would think. in terms of are we happy with the overall layout? Yeah, yes, we are. Generally speaking, there is less impact in terms of moving sort of cut and fill operations if you're going with the slope rather than putting something across the slope, because you then have to cut and fill. So I can absolutely understand why the applicant would say from an architectural perspective, this is the better layout. And I would much prefer to have the green space at the highest end rather than having a dwelling at the highest end. Hopefully that answers your question.
Through you, Chair, yes, thank you. It does. Mr. Ryan, I'm sorry if I'm making you state the obvious, but actually on the grounds this was called in because of that specific parish council objection. I think it's good to hear it's actually that laid out for us clearly.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. I got my microphone on. I think Patrick had to get his on back. That was all about. Yeah, I mean, I think we got to look at this as it is. You can have your doubts about the agricultural access if you like, but as it stands, I can't find a problem with it, and I would support a second.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to comment? If not, we'll move to the vote then. And all those in favour of the application. So,
Can I be incredibly rude and interrupt? No. I'm just can I just myself and Charlotte just have a couple of minutes? The response I gave to council was around there's no windows in the gable end. I just want to check I was looking at the right plans. So I think I was looking at plot 7 and 8, which are the bottom ones. And I need to look, I think it's plot 1 and 5. And I was double checking the plans online now. So what I don't want is for members to make a decision based on potentially incorrect information. So can you just give us a couple of minutes to look at the plans, please? Sorry.
Dan, do you want to ask the applicant?
I'm happy for ask the applicant, but I think I found the answer.
would you like to give us the answer, please?
Apologies, I couldn't find the plans for plot 1. I found plot 5, but I couldn't find plot 1 immediately. So yes, I agree.
You've all heard that, have you? So we'll move to the vote then. All those in favour of the application, please show. And against. And abstention. It's 9 and 2, so. I'll hand you back to the chairman now then. Thank you. That application has been approved. but it's on.
We are now moving on to application 074622 full, Condell Farms, Barkwell. And you know why Charlotte sat in that chair, don't we? Would you like to introduce the application, please, Charlotte?
Yeah, so this one actually is my application. So should know a little bit more about what to talk about. Okay, so this is an application at Houndle Farm. Okay, so the application is for the construction of a replacement dwelling in place of a barn which benefits from a Class Q prior approval for conversion from agricultural to residential. So the site is just to the north of Sparkwell. I've circled the building in question in red. So Houndle Farm is this cluster here, and then this building is just off to the north of the site. So this is the site layout. The dwelling will be on the same footprint as the barn, which has the Class Q prior approval. And then we've got the garden area, drainage works, site access. So this is the building which currently has the permission to be converted to a dwelling. The proposal was to replace this building with a house of plants, which I will show you in a minute. So this is looking from the access to the site, so the site entrance into the site. So you can just see part of the roof slope there on the right hand side. This photo is really just to show members the extent of screening around the site. So as you can see, there's quite sort of thick, dense trees, hedges, and that extends all the way around the site boundary. So the site is extremely well screened. This is just looking to the northwest, so sort of to the other side of the site, again, just to show the extent of the screening. You can just see sort of the edge of the building there on the right hand side. And again, hang on about the screening, but this is a sort of an enlarged aerial view just to show the extent of the site is pretty much the borders kind of defined already by the vegetation and the trees. So just to help members understand the difference with what has approval on site and what is now being proposed, I've done each elevation with a small photo just so you can see. So the top one is what's been approved, so that is what could be built now, conversion of the existing building to a residential dwelling. And then below is what's now proposed. So we've got the southeast, southwest, northwest, and the northeast. So the building's going to be higher, but the applicant has tried to design it in sort of a barn-ish fashion. Not an architectural term, but hopefully you know what I mean. So the key issues, so obviously all the details are kind of covered in the report, but I thought I would just give you the key issues raised by the parish council and the reasons that the ward member has given for bringing the application to committee. So the fact that a single-storey building was approved under Class Q and is now being replaced with a two-storey building. Given how obscured this site is from any public views, the addition of an extra storey isn't something that concerns officers. The existing floor level would be lowered slightly to reduce the impact of the additional height, but it will still be a taller building. But as I say, that doesn't raise any concerns. The size of the footprint has been raised as an issue. Although it's going up, the footprint of the building would actually be reduced slightly, as you can see there. So from 118 square meters to 103.6. Overdevelopment. So there is approval for a dwelling on the site through the Class Q prior approval process. This proposal would also result in one dwelling on the site, so we wouldn't consider it to be overdevelopment. Unsustainable location, yes. Normally, according to policy, this is probably somewhere that we wouldn't probably support housing, but we have the principle has been established by the Class Q permission. So as I say, the principle of residential development on the site has been established already. The parish council and the board member referred to previous refusals on the site. There have been a history of refusals on the site, but the latest prior approval was granted in 2021. And the fact that it's a different design. Yes, it is a different design, but officers consider the design to be acceptable. It's reflective of the countryside location, and we've put conditions recommended to retain that countryside feel, so removal of permitted development rights to prevent any unsympathetic extensions, controls of external lighting, things like that. So when we're looking at replacements of class Q dwellings, we tend to we are looking for betterment from the approved scheme to what's being proposed now. The proposed dwelling is a much more accessible property. It has a lift, accessible rooms, much more suitable for occupants with additional needs to be able to actually live in the property. In terms of low carbon development, it's going to be highly insulated. It's got various renewable energy aspects, and design, obviously slightly more subjective, but is considered to be an improvement on the approved scheme, therefore recommending conditional approval. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sharon. I don't know whether it's first Councillor Abbott or Councillor Brazil. Councillor Abbott, then Brazil.
Yes,
Yeah.
So please, can you bring up the comparison of the class? That will do fine. Oh, no, it won't. I need the other side view rather than end view. There it appears to be that. Are these not exactly to the same scale, I suppose, is the answer to my question?
No, sorry, that's the only way I could put them on the screen.
Okay, grand. And so my second question is, oh, well, I understood the answer. So, okay. So the issue was that the plot is smaller under the new one than it was under the old one, and yet that building looks bigger in that picture than the. So it's not there. All right. Okay. Sorry, you should have heard my lectures every time. Anyway, the ridge height of the dwelling will be no higher than the existing building. And so you've said the ground will drop a little bit, but actually in this report, it says that it's not going to be any higher. And again, one doesn't get that impression from the drawing.
Sorry, I should have clarified that at the beginning. Since I wrote the report, I've had confirmation from the applicant of the height, and it will be higher. So sorry, I should have wrote
so
that.
How much higher then?
So the class Q would be 4 meters to ridge. This one taking into account, right? So it will be 9.5 meters high, but the ground level will be lowered by 1.5. So essentially, doing the maths, it will be 4 meters higher than what is there now.
Okay.
Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, within our policy on it, we talk about the plot size, so the footprint, but do we talk about increase in area, i.e., because it's gone from 1 story, because there's obviously been a massive increase in volume of it.
Talk about volume.
Yeah, volume of it,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I haven't got it. I should know that. The other thing is that I noticed that you say that it's obscured from public view. Is that a material planning consideration? If you can't see it from the public highway or public view, then therefore it doesn't. So
that factored into my consideration in terms of landscape impact design. It's part of the balance. It's not the definitive yes or no, but it is a factor.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, Councillor Brazil, you're absolutely right. If there wasn't already a permission for a Class Q dwelling there, the fact that we couldn't be seen would not be a reason to grant a dwelling in that location plan. Because the principle is already established, Class Q dwelling, the additional impact of the change of design whether it can be easily viewed or not would weigh the balance of the impact of this design rather than the principle.
Oh, I think you just got yourself.
Okay, so you will have heard me say over the years on numerous occasions that the fact that something can't be seen isn't a reason for granting something permission in the countryside. But that's normally what I'm talking about, the principle. On this site, the principle of a residential dwelling is already established through the Class Q permission. And I think Charlotte's absolutely right that when you're weighing in the planning balance, is this either better than what's been done, or does it cause more harm? How easily visible the larger building is will get taken into that balance. So the fact that it's not easily visible means that it doesn't cause significantly greater harm than the original permission. In terms of, is it bigger, or the volume must be bigger? It's 2 floors.
It's out of load, it's got to say,
So what I understand is with Class Q, I know it's on the same footprint, but do we allow Class Qs that increase the volume of it substantially?
Yes. I think the question. That's it. So in terms of Class Qs, there is an upper limit to the volume of buildings that can be converted in the first place. But I think your question is, do we allow placement Class Q buildings to be bigger? I think is the question. Policy TTV 29, which is replacement dwellings in the countryside, which I believe this would fall under. The size of the new replacement dwelling will not be significantly larger than the original house volume. So it's whether you deem it to be significantly larger, and in this case we don't deem it to be significantly larger.
Right. I like you think that one through, Councillor Brazil. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Chairman. Charlotte, could you put the slide in, which was the rebuttal to the parish council observations? Yeah, I think it's the previous one. Yeah. So where it says previous refusals, presumably the prior approval granted in 2021, that was the Q. So all the previous refusals would have been refusals, not under a Q.
No, so if you have a look at the planning history in the report, there have been 2 Class Qs refused on the site prior to the 2021. They were refused because there was no evidence that the building could structurally withstand being converted. That evidence was then submitted in 2021 and the Class Q was allowed. There was also an outline permission refused in 2018 because it was considered to be an unsustainable location. Obviously, those considerations are not relevant in Class Q assessment.
Okay, any more questions? No. All right, we'll then move on to. We've got no objective supporter, Mrs. Burton. Welcome. You know the room.
Good afternoon, members. This application is for a replacement dwelling following Class Q consent for the conversion of an agricultural building, which was granted in 2021. The Class Q consent therefore provides a fallback position under the Mansell case, which supports replacement dwellings subject to there being an enhancement and betterment to the site as required by the joint local plan policies. It is considered that this proposal provides betterment in so many ways. Firstly, design and accessibility. The Scandinavian design house is constructed in timber with a box metal profile roof and is of a design that is considered to be appropriate to this countryside location. The design is much improved from the basic Class Q, which is of a poor design with haphazard cladding. The design also makes a life-proof dwelling for Mr. and Mrs. Kendrick, who are there, with 3 ensuite and accessible bedrooms, the same size as the Class Q. So the Class Q has got 3 rooms, a larger living space on 2 floors, served by lift to accommodate Mr. Kendrick's multiple sclerosis diagnosis that results in very limited mobility. The footprint of the dwelling is slightly smaller, but still offers the 3 bedrooms as the Class Q offered. Secondly, biodiversity and landscaping. The proposal includes a landscaping plan that provides 2 new hedges and a wildflower meadow, which provides an attractive setting and wildlife enhancement that the Class Q does not. The site is within a cluster of 3 other dwellings, but not visible from them, and is surrounded by trees and hedges, making the site virtually invisible in the wider landscape, as you've seen from the photographs. The dwelling will be stacked into the site by 1.5 metres, meaning the level of the dwelling would not be significantly higher than the existing building. Thirdly, the eco-credentials of the new dwelling are second to none, with an air source heat pump, heat recovery system and solar panels, together with high levels of insulation, so the house is built to passive house standards, with triple glazed windows. All of these elements, together with an EV charging point, provide a much enhanced property than the Class Q consent. A Class Q dwelling cannot deliver the DEV 32 benefits that this proposal can. The applicant's near neighbours and locals have supported the proposal with 8 letters of support, acknowledging the enhancement that the proposal gives to the site, and that this accessible dwelling will enable the applicants to remain in the community in which they are very active. The officer's report confirms that all aspects of the proposal are supported, confirming that there will be betterment to the site in terms of design, landscaping, biodiversity, eco-credentials, and we therefore very much hope you will follow this recommendation and support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members' questions, Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Hodgson.
Yes, I'm a bit confused about the measurements because we were told just now by the officer 4 meters higher. You just said it would be very little difference in this height to this in the original building. Is that correct? But where's 4 meters?
So I said it's not significantly different or something like that.
Yeah.
So the ridge height of this proposal is 9.5 metres. I think the ridge height of the building is 4.2 metres. We're taking it down by 1.5 metres on the site because it's a sloping site you've taken down. But Charlotte said it's just a bit lower than 4 metres. That's correct. Those figures are correct.
4 meters. So long. My math didn't work out because I thought it would go like 2.5.
13 feet in real old money. It was next. Hodgson, sorry. Yeah, big podcast.
Yeah, Amanda, I just wanted to ask you, the height that's there, is that to do with the passive design? Because I understand sometimes with passive design, which obviously with the heat pump and you let sometimes leave more volume at the top to allow cooling and the airflow. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. It's correct. So there's the design of the passive house. As I understand, each of the floors are slightly higher than a normal. I think building regs requires 2.5, 2.6 ceiling height, but these floors are higher than that. I think they're 3.2, so they're sort of 600 higher. So you've got ground floor and first floor, and then the high ceiling height to let the ventilation and for the air cooling system. It's Scandi design, so that's how they have them.
Councillor Abbott.
I'm interested in the roofing. I know nothing about roofs, but metal roof just doesn't sound like a normal approach.
It's to keep the agricultural feel, so it's timber clad with a steel roof to look like a barn.
Any further questions? No? Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Baldry, I see you lurking in the background somewhere. Board member?
Good afternoon, members, and first of all, congratulations. I watched this morning's session online. I admire your stamina enormously for what was a marathon session, but equally, I am sure you came to the right result. So congratulations on that as well. On this application, the problems we get with Class Q, and I know it's in legislation, but I regret it enormously that it is possible, but that's what people can do. And I first of all say I have enormous sympathy for Mr. Kendrick and his needs for having a more accessible dwelling to live in. But as members will be aware, we should not take account of people's personal circumstances, because the situation can change after permission is given for an application. And also, by way of introduction, apologies from the Parish Council for not being here. The Parish Council representative deals with planning construction with Parish Council is Councillor Claire Lee, and like many others we've heard today, he sent an email to Councillor Thomas and myself this morning to say that she has both. It seems to be a recurring occurrence. But in her absence, can I just pick out a couple of bits from the Parish Council objections? The proposed design for the dwellings is dramatically different to the building under Class Q. The drawings show the proposed dwelling to be significantly taller and going from single story to a double story. And that is part of my reasons for bringing it to the committee. But in their questions, councillors Abbott and Brazil have already made my point about the increase in volume of size. Mention is also made within the report of Mansell versus Tunbridge, and that is dealt with, I think, in paragraph 2.3. And it has been explained to me that that case is significantly different to this case, and I'll be happy to enter into a legal discussion about that, but perhaps not in this meeting. Going back to reasons I brought to the committee are the reasons which have been put forward by the Parish Council. But I am also concerned about development which is not sustainable. We spent hours and hours discussing the joint local plan. It went to review, it was investigated, and it was approved. And by any standard, and I think the officer has already acknowledged this is not a sustainable place for a building. And either we're going to take the joint local plan seriously and not grant permission, whether or not it is a Class Q, in an unsustainable location. I came, and some members of this committee probably went on a previous site visit in 2018 and saw the site, and the outcome was it was refused because it is not a sustainable location and has limited accessibility. That went to appeal, and the refusal was upheld. And I maintain, members, that this is still not a sustainable location, and I ask you to vote against the officer recommendation and vote for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Any questions? Councillor Thomas, are you going to speak?
No, not at this stage, Chairman. I'm not. You will note from the report that I did not call this in. That's the order he called this in. So as I find myself on this panel today, I think I will listen to the debate on my own opinion as a result of that.
Right, okay, so we move on to the debate now, don't we? Who's going to open that? Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think we'd all agree that Class Q is the most terrible piece of planning legislation. The problems that it causes are innumerable. But having said that, it is what we've got. Class Q, and I hear what Keith said about an unsustainable location, but Class Q has established the fact that there can be a residential dwelling in. But I'm afraid the unsustainable bit is not relevant. I think the main issues that we're concerned about here are the increase in size and whether it has a detrimental effect on the landscape. We've heard from the planning officer that you can't see it from public view, and that's in her mind of coming to the planning bench. She's decided that is not really an issue, and that's fair enough. I think we can all accept. But really, to me, the one thing that is the concern is the fact that it is increased in size, and I have to say, it does worry me. I mean, there's no, if this gets permission, you know, they could then probably go, well, that's a fallback position. We're going to increase something that's going to even be a little bit bigger than this. You can go on and on and on until you end up with a dimension. You know, by it, so I, you know, it does concern me that, but I appreciate the officer reports and in her mind that the balance is okay. And so rather reluctantly, because it's God's Q, I will move approval as per the officer recommendation.
You know, just to clarify this, is there nothing in the legislation about class Q increasing volume?
There's nothing in the legislation about class Q increasing the volume. There's a relatively complex volumetric conditions around whether you're providing. When you first come with class Q, you can have up to, correct or wrong, up to 5 under a class Q, but only 3 can be over a certain size, and then there's a maximum floor level. But this application, we're not talking about class Q. The class Q application has been granted and approved, is there. So what we're looking at is a planning application for a alternative design following the class Q. So in my view, it goes back to our own local plan policy. It says replacement dwellings in the countryside are acceptable, provided there isn't a significant increase in volume. There's other things, but in terms of volume, that's the main thing, and they're on the same footprint, and it's not creating a separate unit. It's still a replacement. I've done some very back of.
Yes, all right.
No, back of a sheet of paper calculations on the on what I can see online, based on the measurements up there. On the current proposal is 100. The current proposal is 103 square meters, and the class Q was 118. I think that the building to the existing building to the eaves is probably about 4 meters. And looking at the plans, it says to the eaves on this one is about 5.4. So, and I absolutely accept. I'm not calculating the volume of the roof here because I haven't got the actual dimensions to work out triangular volume. But just going to eaves, it would appear to be about an 18% increase from the existing building volumetrically up to the eaves to the new one. Obviously, just 18% isn't. I must admit, I thought when I was looking at plans on the Lancashire Council hours, I thought it was going to be significantly more than that. But just based on 118 times 4, 472, and 103 times 5.4 is 556. So it's a difference of 84, which I think is about just less than 20% of 472. So I think excluding the roof, and I need to be quite clear about that, excluding the roof, I think the volumetric increase is 18%. And my personal view is I think that is acceptable in policy terms. Members may come to a different view, but that would be my question.
Right, thank you for that. Thank you, Will.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I did. I think we all have some of these class Qs within our own wards, and I've seen 1 or 2 class Qs that have been developed, and they come out like a mini mansion. So it is what it is, and we are where we are with these policies at present. And I would second Councillor Brazil's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else wish to say anything? Councillor Hodgson and then Councillor Taylor.
Just thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, just to say that I think it's really good to welcome good high quality eco spec on this house, and I just think that's something we should bear in mind. And I think that's when I raised really, I was checking really with Amanda that sometimes with these passive houses, you do need a bit more space inside to ensure that you can do adequate cooling. It's a bit of a challenge without. So I think that's something we need to be aware of, and I find it acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. I would accept this one because I think probably this and down, then it's a bit of a fallback of the class Q, I take it. So I'm quite happy to support.
Okay. Any more for anyone? Okay, so we have a recommend for approval, and we have a proposer and seconder to for that. Can I have a short hand for all those in favour of recommendation for approval? Those against? Abstentions? One. Thank you very much for that. That application is approved. Yeah. So we will have a couple of seconds until we go on to this. That's fine, that's okay.
So that's one there. That's two. That's a piece of good news.
Yeah.
You actually got. I know, it's on one left. Because the vineyard ones have been deferred. What's that? But that's one.
Oh, fine.
Next month. I'm at the end of this month, isn't it, 27th? No. Just the point was one left, yeah. Information.
Yeah, no.
What's up?
It's like,
Oh, yeah, I know, Richard.
yeah, around that.
Yeah. What's up? Up there again, right. This one you'll see, I've actually called it, well, at the time, Councillor Brazil was still chairman of this committee. That's why he wanted me to take that on, because he declared personal interest. And as far as I'm aware, that is okay. So we will get, I'll say which one it is. It is, page, the High Nature Centre, East Portsmouth, application 3186.20 variation. And Jack, you want to present this one, please?
So this application is for the High Nature Centre in East Portsmouth. It's an application to vary some of the conditions that were expressed on a previous planning commission before this act. This slide shows you the application site, which is hatched in red. This is the site from an aerial image shown. The original permission, which was granted in 2012, was for the construction of a roundhouse, cited for 5 years to be used in association with Nature Holiday Enterprise. Provision of additional facilities for educational, recreational, business activities, together with associated car parking, landscaping works. This permission was then subsequently varied in 2013, which was basically amendments to the approved plans. And then again in 2017, and the 2070 consent also allowed for the permanent permission for the roundhouse. This is the site in a little bit more detail, and it's the site plan that was submitted with the application. And the other information submitted with the application was a detailed evidence base indicating the history of the site, if you like, and where it's come from, where it is now. And this was submitted as evidence that the conditions that they're asking to be varied should be agreed. I haven't gone into the detail of it. The detail is on the website. I'm sure you have a chance to look at. Just before I go into the key issues, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Today we had one more letter of support, just to let you know, it came in this morning and suggested that the site was very environmentally friendly and one of the most environmentally friendly campsites that the person who sent the letter in had stated that. So the application is for the variation of 3 conditions. Condition number 3, which had a 10-year restriction on the use. So they would like to remove that restriction. Condition number 5, which is to change the use of the permitted use of the polytunnels. There are about 8, I think, polytunnels on the site. They'd like to change the use. The current use is for B1 and D1 use. To allow for a field kitchen to be and dining facilities to be used for the polytunnels to be used for a field kitchen and a dining use. In the time since the last application, the use classes order has changed, and the B1 uses and the D1 use that was approved on this site, which was sort of mainly for sort of day nurseries, fresh facilities, and what have you, have all moved to Class E in the use classes order. So we just need to bear that in mind. It will be a different class if members decide to approve it. And condition number 23 was that no further caravans or yurts or tents should be allowed on the site. And the application is therefore to ask for the ability for the site to be used for additional tents and occasional camper vans. It's the description that was provided in the application. In terms of the parish council objected to the application, they didn't feel that there was sufficient evidence to demonstrate the economic and employment offer on the site, as well as some other issues which are in the report. And there is an outstanding enforcement case on the site. In that the proposal is that the works and the uses on the site currently do not comply with the original planning consent. This application was in one sense submitted in order to try to overcome some of the problems with the enforcement situation. Landscaping objected to it on the basis that, as previously, the site is within the South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty. It's also in the Heritage Coast area, and it's also in the designated undeveloped coast. And the policies in association with that are policy Dev 23, policy Dev 24, and policy Dev 25. Clearly, being an incredibly sensitive landscape, any development in such a landscape needs to be very carefully considered and must protect, serve, and enhance that landscape. The officer that wrote the report in relation to this development, it's not me, I'm representing them, they're not here, indicates that it is their view that actually this application should not be a section 73 application, it should actually be a full application. And the reason for that is because the additional uses associated with it would potentially need the description of development to change if it were to be approved. And so effectively the existing description of development would not be able to accommodate the additional to the changes proposed as a result of this application. That, in essence, is the first reason proposed for refusal. The other issues which obviously we need to consider in relation to a site such as this is whether it is in the countryside or not. The officer in his report indicated that it was his view that it was in the countryside. We tend to agree with that. And the question then was raised with regard to whether it was an isolated location using the relevant case law to assess that impact. And again, it was decided that it was an isolated location as well. So therefore, both parts of policy TTP 26 are relevant. In reviewing that, the officer concluded that it wasn't necessary for agriculture. It did not secure a long-term use of the heritage asset. It did not secure the reuse of a redundant building, and neither does it have any outstanding design credentials as required by the first part of the policy. And neither did it comply with elements of the second part of the policy, and therefore his view was that it was contrary to policy Dev TTV 26. The other relevant policy is policy Dev 15, which is in relation to the rural economy and support for rural businesses. In this case, the officer felt that paragraphs 1, 7 and 8 of the policy were relevant. Those parts of the policy require some degree of evidence to be submitted. So, for example, in part 8, there is a requirement that a travel plan is submitted so that it demonstrates that the applicant has acknowledged the fact that there will be additional trips to the site and has provided evidence of that's been considered, and that there are mitigation measures available to help prevent too much of private car use in this location, and that no travel plan has been submitted. One of the other pertinent parts of the policy is that the sort of first part of the policy indicates that it's a sort of permissive element of the policy and encourages rural employment and economic development, but only on the basis that it has no impact on the environment and on the neighbours. In this case, the landscape officer has indicated quite strongly that there are environmental concerns. The development is in the South Devon AONB. It doesn't, or the proposal does not conserve and enhance the AONB landscape, because potentially it would add additional fence camperlands to the site, which would not serve to enhance the AONB. Additionally, policy Dev 24 with regard to the undeveloped coast, it indicates that permission should be refused if this development, which could be sited elsewhere outside the undeveloped coast, and in this case, a camping facility could indeed be sited elsewhere outside of the undeveloped coast. The landscape also mentioned the potential impact of light pollution with additional camping facilities on the site, which would be again against policy Dev 25. In terms of any neighbour impacts, clearly if it's isolated, then it's not necessarily close to a lot of neighbouring properties, but there are some properties within maybe 500 to 1,000 metres from the site, and some of the letters of representation do indicate that there is concern about the disturbance sometimes currently experienced at the site, but that potential would be increased if there was additional camping facilities and dining and kitchen availability on the site. In terms of ecology, no survey was submitted, therefore we are not in a position to be able to assess whether or not there's an ecological impact. And again, with regard to climate change, there was no information submitted, so we cannot assess that aspect of the proposal. So in conclusion, the impact on the original permission and the description of development is the first reason for refusal. permanent use of the site for tourism accommodation in an isolated countryside location is contrary to TTB 26, and the impact on the A1B and the coast and heritage coast means that it's contrary to policies Dev 23, 24, 25. And there's no evidence been submitted to indicate that the employment of in compliance with Dev 15 has been demonstrated. And there's insufficient information with regard to ecology, drainage, and low carbon development. The officer recommendation based on the planning policies for this area is therefore for refusal.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, because hearing that report, it sounds very much like the reports that we've had on previous occasions on this application. But they've obviously been approved. So what material weight do we give to the fact that we've already approved most of this? And what we're looking at here is just the variations to some of the conditions. So particularly in respect of the landscape report. It seems to me that they're getting a second, landscape objected last time, but this committee has decided it was okay. And so, but they're coming back again and having another go.
The landscape officer is basing their opinion on the additional changes that would happen to the site if the variation to the conditions were approved.
So the landscape officer's concerns are with the extra tents and camper vans. So,
sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm clear, there's a polytunnels already there. They've got D1, whatever use it is now, and they think that so having people inside them having a meal is detrimental to the landscape.
Well, I think they're indicating that the impact of the additional camping units would be the thing that would impact the landscape.
Okay, thank you.
I think I probably need to clarify. It said about exactly why the officer report is what the first reason refusal is. This can't be dealt with as a sensitive part of it. Can't be. I'm sure Mr. Fairburn will jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. There's Section 73 applications or variation applications have been the subject of a number of court cases now. Effectively, it is the same as granting a fresh planning permission, but the scope of a Section 73 cannot grant anything in additional to the base permission. So if you had a consent for 15 dwellings, your variation can't sneak in another dwelling. It change the design layout of those 15 dwellings, but it can't make it 16. I've just checked the original planning permission in the application was 2012. I didn't check. The original one was, as on the screen, construction of roundhouse, siding of 5 yurts to be used in association with nature holding enterprise, provision of additional facilities for educational, recreational, business activities, together with associated car parking, landscaping works. So that's the base permission. So legally, a variation application cannot provide for development that goes beyond the scope of the application. Now, looking at the report in terms of what is being proposed, the changes to condition 3, which is a permanent permission for the temporary yurt structures, that's absolutely acceptable retail as part of this Section 53, no problem at all. The field kitchen, in terms of condition 5, and adding food and drink, I would say that it could easily come within the terms of additional facilities for educational, recreation and business. Where I have a difficulty is changing condition 23 for the provision of additional occasional tents and camper vans is beyond the scope of the original permission. And I don't believe the authority can lawfully grant permission for additional occasional tents and campgrounds as part of this application. Because I think it goes beyond the scope for section 73 application. I'll try and explain that.
I understand that, and I see some merit in that argument. I think it's very unfortunate that the authority hasn't contacted the applicant to say this. You know, it's been verified. It's gone through all the right procedure, and then suddenly this authority has turned around and go, sorry, doesn't fit the bill.
I can't disagree with you.
Okay, so look, I mean, I also accept that if we were to approve this, then somebody could object and say, actually, they were illegal. So I understand. I get that, and so I think in some way, that part of it that needs to be taken out in order for there to be some. But you see what I mean? I'm saying, as an applicant, they've in good faith put in a variation, and then at the 11th hour been told no, it's not.
My feeling in terms of the way forward, clearly for members to continue with the determination of the application, particularly with the two elements that you clearly can. I think, given where we are, I think it would also be useful for officers and the applicant to have a steer members whether they would support a separate application for additional yurts and campervans, because then I think we're not then coming back here again if an application comes back, because there'll be a clear steer from, well, we might be back here, but there'll be a clear steer from members as to whether a lawful application for these elements would be supported or not, because then that gives a degree of certainty to the applicant moving forward without speaking to not just Ms. Southall, but the other officers. I genuinely don't know whether this has been brought to the applicant's attention. If it hasn't, I sincerely apologise. It should have been without speaking to other officers. I don't know.
Well, I think that seems to be the sensible way forward. In that respect, that we can determine at least two of them, and the third one we get a steer from members of the committee. Obviously, the applicant's going to speak at some point, so they would have heard this discussion that's gone on. Hopefully, there'll be, we can come to some kind of compromise.
Jim, one of the things I could suggest was that perhaps the members, and this was before Mr. Weimer spoke, and I kind of accept what he says, and maybe that is the way forward. The way forward I had was perhaps that you deferred further consideration of the application and invited a withdrawal of the element that is at the moment falling foul of section 73. So then this could be then, because you can't issue a split decision. So you'd have to refuse the whole of the application. Now, it might be the wrong thing to do. So I think it is entirely up to you, but you could certainly defer it with a view to having further discussions with the applicant about withdrawing the amendment condition 23. The application could then could be determined. Obviously, they wouldn't then have the view on whether you minded to agree the variation of clause condition 23.
Yeah. I think we can't issue a split decision. That's not going to continue. I would have thought the best thing would be to defer it if other members want to stay. sort it out so it can come in and we can talk, but then we can deal with it correctly.
There was potentially alternative. Another alternative is if we have a 5-minute adjournment, enable myself have a conversation with the applicant. So if the applicant is prepared to withdraw condition 23 element now, then we know we can just deal with those other 2 elements in this meeting today rather than deferring it. I think it'd be better if we can have a conversation, have an adjournment, have a conversation with the applicant, so we're not making assumptions on what they would like to do. If they would like to have it deferred, then fine. If they'd like to withdraw that element, have the other 2 elements determined today, then I think we can do that. I'd much rather have a conversation now, but to take that forward. That's agreeable with members.
Because whatever happens, that 3rd element has to have a separate.
Well, members could decide to approve it, but the advice from myself and I think Mr. Fairbairn would be it's an unlawful decision. It wouldn't be a wise thing. It wouldn't be a wise thing to do, and it potentially wouldn't help the applicant in the long run.
Right. I think. Sorry.
Please.
Yeah. I wouldn't want, sorry, many apologies. Never the.
Anyways, let's not distract.
Never the train shall meet.
Regarding variation of condition 23, is there any way that we could just put actually a condition on whatever we, in other words, contain it? Because it's a bit potentially vague at the moment. If we could put some kind of limitations on what we actually mean by that, would that actually deal with the problem? Therefore, we would feel that we would know what we were meeting. Because it looks to me like there's not being asked, not like being asked for kind of an occasional traveller site, which you end up with caravans.
The difficulty is, my view, the original permission grants permission for the site for 5 years and additional facilities, but doesn't actually grant permission for camping or campgrounds beyond that 5-year description. If it had said 5 years and camping, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But because it's introducing something that wasn't in the original description, that's where it falls foul of the section 73. I absolutely accept this. This is very much a technicality. If we grant it beyond the powers we've got, it leaves it open to challenge, and it's potentially, in my view, be an unlawful permission.
And my other point was that in terms of what was approved last year nationally because of COVID to allow people to have temporary campsites, is that not already permitted to do?
At the moment, it possibly is. My understanding is that the temporary COVID campsites is either just about to end or it was for a time limited period, and I think it may still go for this summer, but it certainly doesn't go beyond this September. It came in, then it got extended. I think it was extended until this September. I don't think it went any further than that.
I think it's been reduced from 56 to 28 days.
Yeah. So I don't think that would help going on. It's still very much restricted.
I think we're going to adjourn the meeting for a minute and let Mr. Weimer have a discussion with the applicants. And come back. All right, so adjourn it for 5 minutes, okay? There I was thinking, get away.